surrounded. I want you to drop your gun and come out here with your hands up. That man's dangerous, a maniac. We'll smoke him out. Got any tear gas?
Tear gas? Oh, come on.
Well, Sheriff, what do you intend to do? Just stay here?
I'm just giving him a minute to simmer down.
It's time we stop playing games. Mayberry State Police. Mayberry to State Police. Mayberry to State...
What are you calling the state police for?
To get the job done. Get equipment in here, guns, tear gas. If necessary, to blast him out.
Well, now,
Mayberry
that
State
all
Police.
sounds as big deal as can be, but it ain't really necessary.
Well, just what are you planning to do?
Well, if you're finished with all your proper procedure, I reckon we'll just go about our business and arrest that fella up there.
Mayberry to State Police.
Mr. Case, you're getting everybody all head up over nothing. Now, I'm still the sheriff here, and I'm bound to do my own job.
But that man's a menace. He tried to kill me.
You mean when he shot your hat off? No, if Luke had wanted to hurt you, he'd have hurt you. He can shoot the ears off a fly at 40 paces, just being a little cussed. And if you'll quit playing with the radio, I'll just go up there and put a stop to it. Now, Luke, I want you to stop that right now.
Sheriff Taylor! You better come back here! He's gonna get himself killed.
And he knows what he's doing. I hope.
Mr. Brady, I'm sure glad you got here.
You sounded desperate on the phone. What's going on here?
It's a sheriff, sir. Look at him. That's him walking right straight into that gunfire. Don't you think we ought to call the state police?
Just a minute, Case.
But he'll get killed, sir.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself, Luke, acting like a young'un. Bad enough you shooting at Barney and me, but taking pot shots at a total stranger? You know better than that. What's the matter with you? All right, take the prisoner, Deputy.
All right, better let me have that rifle, Sheriff. Go on, you. Let's get in the car. Fooling around with us, will you? All right, come on, move. Up, get in there. Come on, lift him, get in there.
Well, that was a nice job, Sheriff. Oh, my name is Brady, State Police.
Oh, I do.
Took a lot of courage.
Oh, not really. We come up and flush old Luke out every now and then.
Oh?
Yeah.
Oh, Case, what was that phone call of yours all about? What's the complaint here?
Oh, yes, sir. I want to report a chocolate birthday cake with candles. A gun went off. There were doilies on the chairs. And he was standing there wearing a polka dot tie. Yes, I saw him. He had a big polka dot tie on, and he was standing there. And then the deputy he had oh, well, never mind, Mr. Brady. Never mind.
You know something? I think that boy's been working too hard. He's right curious acting.
You know, maybe it's just me, but Luke looks an awful lot like Ralph Hollister. Yeah? Rafe Hollister? Rafe Hollister, yeah. Rafe Hollister. Okay, so we're going to start a new series this morning. We've got 8 Sundays until Easter. 8 Sundays from now, we're going to celebrate Easter. And so looking in the Old Testament, and y'all know my stomach ulcers and everything kick up when I'm between series. So I like to be in a book. So we're in a book, and don't worry, I'm going to give you some good controversy this morning. Some good things you can go back and say, I disagree with Rod on that. And so you'll have some good stuff to deal with there. You know, the saying, it's said that those that can do and those that can't teach. You ever heard that? You learned that in college, that the teachers that teach in college, they can teach, but you know, when did you do that? And there are a few of them. There's a few exceptions to that, but mostly those that can actually get out there and do, and those that can't teach. Well, we're looking at Jesus going up into, as we go up into Easter, head towards Easter. And I want to look at a passage of Scripture or a portion of Scripture that I typically just jump over. It's in the book of Matthew, and typically my favorite part of Matthew, honestly, is Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount. And the thing you need to understand about Jesus is Jesus is going to he's going to follow in the footsteps and do everything that Israel could have, should have, would have done. So in other words, and this becomes fabulous when you visit the Holy Land, you see that Jesus walked and followed the very steps of Israel. Israel comes out of Egypt as a nation, goes in as a family, comes out as a nation. Jesus goes into Egypt and comes out of Egypt. When Jesus goes into the wilderness to be tempted, when he comes back, he's baptized, and where he's baptized, that space right outside, probably 5 to 7 miles from Jericho, is exactly where Israel crossed over into the Holy Land. It's almost like Jesus set out a map and said, I want to be just like them. And Jesus goes, and it's freaky. Jesus follows and does those same things. Some of the miracles and things that Jesus does is a direct correlation and comparison with what Israel does. So he follows in his footsteps. Israel was created to give God's message of love and grace to the world. They were going to be unique. And Jesus comes through and Jesus does it positively. And so when we end chapter 4 of Matthew, it says Jesus was teaching and doing miracles and different things. And then in chapters 5, 6, and 7 of Matthew, he gives the Sermon on the Mount. And that sermon, we've gone through it, I know since in 32 years, I know I've at least taught through that twice. And I'm drawn back to that. I mean, those images, he ends a person building a house. Listening to his word is like a person that builds his house on a strong foundation, on the rock. And when the wind and seas come and blow, it still stands after that. But a person that listens to his words and doesn't do what it says, he says it's like a person building their house on the sand. And when trials comes, when the winds and sea comes and blows against it, that house is utterly destroyed. And so he ends this talk he gives, and the passage tells us, it comments on the way people received his preaching. It says, when Jesus had finished saying these things in chapters 5, 6, and 7, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. They were blown away by not only what he taught, but he goes one step further. The reason they were amazed is because he taught as one who had authority. He spoke as one who had authority. Now, when we use that word authority, when we think about it, we can mean it in several different ways, but when he taught, it was like he was intimately aware and involved with the material. He spoke with authority, and that was unlike religious teachers of his day. Religious teachers of his day would know all of the different rabbis and all of the different teachers of the law, and they would quote them. It was like a running footnotes type of situation. They would footnote everything. Jesus is not footnoting. He's saying, you've heard it said, but I tell you. And he's interpreting the Old Testament, or like we like to say, the left side of the book. And so he's teaching, and people are saying, this is just the plain sense that he's teaching is so life-altering. It's so life-changing. I can take the things he's saying, and I can apply it to my life, and it's going to change me. It is changing me. And so he does all that teaching. But now, not only does he teach as one having authority and not as the teachers of the law, but he can go one step further. He can actually do. And in chapters 8 and 9, he's going to do. And what you need to understand is this is Jesus confronting the world. D.A. Carson wrote a book. He wrote a great commentary on the Gospel of Matthew. But he wrote a book called Jesus Confronts the World. It's Jesus coming head to head with the forces of evil, with the forces of darkness. Because if you'll remember back, one of the things I've taught over the last couple of years is the idea and concept that there are two kingdoms. And so these two kingdoms are at each other, and these two kingdoms are in conflict with one another. And anytime we turn on our TV set and we see the things that are going on, we see tanks in the streets, we see things being blown up, we see children being moved. And it's been surreal this week. I looked at one video, and there were people in the grocery store in Kiev, just in the grocery store, just shopping around and everything. And there's a war going on right outside. It's kind of surreal. But anytime we see that disruption, we know that there's evil in the world. And we know that there are two different kingdoms at work. And one of the things that happens is that people that say, okay, that needs to stop, a lot of times they don't get the right answer. I looked at a documentary, not this past week, but week before last. And it was one I found fabulous. If you are someone of my age, maybe a little older, but definitely maybe a little younger, but definitely if you're older, you grew up with Motown. I mean, you grew up with Motown. As soon as you hear a Motown record, the groove, you're right there. And so Showtime did a documentary on Motown, and it was free for the month. You've only got one more day to look at it. Free for the month of February. And so they're highlighting Berry Gordy and Smokey Robinson and Motown. And they're talking about the change that happened in music. And so they just started doing things themselves, and they were a family. And you would do everything from answer the phones to write the songs to produce. I mean, you were doing everything. And as they grew in success, as they grew successfully, it was very interesting the things that Berry Gordy wanted his artists to be able to do. They had what I would call charm school. And they're saying, man, I sing. I don't need no charm school. No, he prepared them. And then the next picture they showed was Diana Ross and the Supremes meeting the Queen of England. He says, you'll never know how high you can soar. But as it got more successful, Motown in Detroit, and it's very interesting because he got hit from all sides because he would hire people regardless of color, regardless of religion. He just wanted the best. But some of his artists wanted to begin protesting the world that is. Okay, and if you remember the late 60s, the world that wasn't very pretty, not pretty at all. So they wanted to protest that. And Berry Gordy was saying, no, I want us to look at the happy things. I want us to, the things you want to sing about doesn't correspond with my values. And there's an artist, and his name's Marvin Gaye. And Marvin Gaye was just huge, And so Marvin Gaye wanted to write some protest songs. And he started protesting the things that were in our country that needed to be addressed. They needed to be addressed. People being beaten and the inhumanity to each other and those things. And he wanted to speak out against that. So as I'm hearing this and everything, I go, man, I know Marvin Gaye isn't alive today. You see, you need to understand the 80s were completely lost on me. The late 80s were completely lost on me. So I looked and I said, Marvin Gaye died like in 82 or 83, So I looked up how Marvin Gaye died. I don't know if you know this or not, but Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own dad. But he wasn't just shot and killed by his own dad. He was shot and killed by his own dad while he was trying to break up a fight between his mother and father. Now, you think about that for a second, especially the last two Sundays, what we've gone through the last two Sundays. But think about that. Here's a guy that looks out the window and he sees the world's a mess and he says, somebody's got to do something about that. Somebody's got to stand. I'm going to speak against that. And in his own home, there's destruction. And I looked at that and I said, oh my. People think they can solve this on their own. People think they can solve it. The problem begins right here in the human heart. It's in the human heart, and it must be addressed. And Jesus begins to confront that. And he confronts that with authority. And what we're going to see here in these first three stories is he's going to confront the things that need to be confronted in the kingdom of darkness. So let's dig in. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. I didn't bring pictures, but if you'll know, Jesus did the Sermon on the Mount. If you're looking at a map, at the very top, there's this top mountain. It's kind of a bowl shape down to where the Sea of Galilee is. And Jesus speaks the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And when he had finished speaking, he walks down. The 3 times I've been in Israel, I've done this walk. You walk down from there to Capernaum. And it says, as he's coming down the mountainside, and the imagery here is like Moses coming down from the mountain. That's the imagery that a person would read and they would realize Jesus is coming down like Moses. But a man with leprosy or some type of skin ailment, skin disease, came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. It's not a question of if you can do it. It's a question of if this aligns up with your will. If this aligns with your knowledge or your desire. I have no doubt that you can heal me. Now, leprosy was something that spread to other people. You would have to be isolated. You would have to stay away from the population. I can see this guy as he's walking, trying to make his way to Jesus. People say, I ain't getting near him. 6-foot rule? Nope. Mask? Nope. Nothing. I'm hazmat suit for this guy. And so he approaches Jesus, and he approaches him, and it says, and he kneels before him. It's like he worships him. And this Jewish guy comes and he says, if you are willing, you can make me clean. You can solve the problem that I have. And Jesus reached out his hands and touched the man. I bet you he wasn't expecting that. Think about the years this guy had gone without human touch. My daughter, when she spoke here when I'd had surgery, her whole sermon was based on this concept or this idea of human touch and the difference it makes. He reached out his hands and he touched the man. Right away, people would go, no, that's not going to work. Why? Because we know that leprosy can be caught. And here, Jesus has just contracted leprosy. But Jesus is representing his own kingdom, a different kingdom. He's stepping in and he's going places that the other kingdom can't go. And so he touches the man. He says, I'm willing. And he says, be clean. And immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. The guy's leprosy is gone in an instant. It's like Jesus' kingdom breaking through that kingdom of darkness, that kingdom of doubt, that kingdom of harm. You know, you got to realize everything from the fights that take place in our home with our children and with our spouse to the tanks that roll in the city, it makes, and everything in between, it makes one kingdom very happy, and it's not God's. Every time someone is suffering, every time someone is in pain, every time someone has an illness, one kingdom is very excited about that, but the other isn't. The other weeps because the other kingdom knows it should not be that way. And so he was cleansed of his leprosy immediately. Then Jesus said to him, see that you don't tell anyone. Don't go back. How do you do that? How do you do that? You know, Jesus, of all the things, impossible things you ask me to do, that's pretty impossible. That's pretty hard to do. Because no one knows how long this guy had been in this condition. See that you don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Now, this is in Leviticus chapters 13 and 14. It tells you how to do. This was very, very rare. The whole idea of leprosy was a death sentence, a slow, cruel death sentence. It was isolation, and it was where a person basically was by themselves or with people that were like them. The Old Testament will show time and time again leprosy as being like a picture of sin. It eats us apart bit by bit by bit by bit. He says, go show yourself to the priest. And this priest, what you're going to show him is a testimony. It's a testimony. Now, this word testimony, it can be meant in a condemning sense. You're going to condemn him with this, or it can be a testimony in a positive sense. Right here, it's used neutrally. This priest, what he's about to see when this former leper comes into his presence, what he's about to see, it's up to him to decide if this is a positive witness to him or negative. Is he going to respond to this in a way, wow, I want to meet this Jesus of Nazareth. This guy has authority. This guy can speak to disease, to ailment. He can address that. I want to know more about that. Or does he end up saying, no way, this guy does this by another spirit or something? Jesus will address that a little bit later. But this first one, it's a Jew that has leprosy, and Jesus' authority is displayed. Jesus acts, Jesus does create a little glimpse of heaven in this guy's world. He brings a little glimpse of heaven into this guy's world. And then he goes on, as he enters Capernaum, and today if you go in Capernaum, guys, you can't wear shorts. We had to put a wrap around Cameron. We've got a picture of him with a wrap because he had shorts on. Typically, women can't have sleeveless shirts. This whole city is a city where Peter lived. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. This guy's a Gentile. In all likelihood, a Gentile that's asking for help. And a centurion, the idea is that he's a soldier who is over at least 100 people. There's some discussion here whether at this time Rome had occupied that part of the city, but Herod had people up there. Herod was trying to keep things under control. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly. Or as my mother says, terrible. I had to ask my wife, how does mom say it? Let me spell it out here. Suffering, she's just terrible. Jesus said to him, shall I come and heal him? Here's an offer. I'll come to your house and heal him. This Gentile centurion was not ready for that. That was kind of like the furthest thing from his mind. And he says, the centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That's not what I'm asking for. But just say the word and my servant will be healed. What faith? There's no distance that you can't span with your authority. Whether it's across town or across the state or the country or the world. Whether it's across the universe, there's no distance that you can be where you and your authority cannot address this situation. He said, for I myself am a man under authority. The man knows that the uniform he wears, what he does, he's not just representing himself. He is representing Rome. When he speaks with the authority of Rome. And with soldiers under me, and I tell one to go, and he goes, and the one to come, and he comes. And I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. He says, I understand authority. You don't need to come to my house because you have authority. You represent another kingdom. And there are people, there are entities under your authority. So I know you don't need to come to him. All you need to do is speak the word. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those following him, truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. This guy has huge faith. He's a Gentile that has huge faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west. Many from the east and the west. Gentiles will come. And look at what he says will happen. And will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. That's New American. That's NIV. New American Standard says will recline with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The translation there is will dine. Many are going to have a feast, a banquet, and at this banquet, who's going to be present is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside. Okay, we're going to camp here. Here comes the controversy. Hold on. But the subjects of the kingdom. So there are going to be people coming from east and west. They're going to be Gentiles. They're going to be able to dine with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. but the subjects of the kingdom, you do know, I mean, we've talked about this, translations are interpretations. People are making interpretations. People are trying to interpret what it does by the translation. But the subjects of the kingdom, the word subjects there is sons. But sons doesn't fit with the theology that people are trying to wrap their head around. Sons of the kingdom. If you're a son of the kingdom, you're pretty much in the kingdom, right? You're son of the kingdom. You're in the kingdom. You're not a subject, but we got to soft pedal this because we don't exactly know where this thing is going. So, but the sons of the kingdom will be thrown outside. Don't want to go outside. I want to be reclining. I want to be dining. I want to be at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He says, we'll be thrown outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay. Every commentary, all but at least one that I know of, every commentary sees this as a picture of hell. People without faith are thrown into hell. And the reason why it says into the darkness, and also where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's what everybody says. Because you got this idea, of Matt Dillon and Festus, taking and throwing the dude out of the saloon. But even that word thrown out, it's used in James chapter 2, verse 25. And it is used, in fact, I'll read it. I printed it out on mine. James chapter 2, verse 25. In the same way was Rahab the prostitute not justified by works also when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way. Sent them out. Same word as will be thrown outside. So the subjects of the kingdom, or the sons of the kingdom, will be sent out into the darkness. Here's a picture of what's going on here. There was a banquet, and the banquet was for firstborns, and it was kind of an elite type of thing, elite situation. And by the way, the weeping and gnashing of teeth is used 2 other times in Scripture, both of them in Matthew 22, Matthew 24. And those, there are parables. There gives us a glimpse, a story of what he's illustrating there. But this is a clear reference on what he's talking about. And I think he's talking about this. That there are sons of the kingdom who think they're going to be able to dine with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by the very fact that they are sons of the kingdom. But they have not done things. They have not stepped up in ways. This is the way I would phrase it here. And there are other people who have stepped up for Christ. There are Gentiles who have stepped up for Christ. And because of their works, because of their acknowledging Jesus' authority, they end up having rewards. And they end up getting some privileges that others don't. And so when it comes time for the feast, the ones are sent out. And evidently this is like nighttime. So you have this banquet hall and you have the lights on and there's so much excitement about what's going on. But those people who just kind of coasted and who just, my faith didn't do a whole lot for me. It got me into heaven, but it didn't do a whole lot for me. Those are sent outside. Hey, this is not for you. This is the closed portion of our program. You need to leave. And they're gone out. And the weeping and gnashing of teeth, I think, is nothing more than this: regret. Ooh, why? Why didn't I take a stand for Christ? Why? Here's a Gentile, a centurion that gets it. Why does he get to be in there and I don't? How come he gets to be that close to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who exhibited great faith, but I don't? You had your chance. You didn't stand for Christ. You knew his authority, but yet you just kind of coasted, as it were. And there'll be regret. And there'll be questioning, and you'll be asking, why didn't I take the chance to do it? It's like I got a ticket, but it was a ticket a day late. And everybody else says what this is right here is hell. But I don't know how you get around that with the sons of the kingdom, even though they try to soft pedal and say subjects of the kingdom. I think the question here is recognizing Jesus' authority and putting that authority active in your life and living your life in that way makes a huge difference. And it makes a huge difference not only now, it makes a huge difference then. It makes a huge difference later. So he goes on. Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, let it be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that moment. Jesus' authority invades the space that the enemy has, invades the kingdom. He steps in and he touches and reverses leprosy. He touches and reverses a paralysis. And then he goes on, not only to a Jew, not only to a Gentile, but to his disciples when Jesus came into Peter's house. And I think I showed you a picture of Peter's, where they believe they found Peter's house. There's a Catholic church built over that. It looks like a starship from something from Star Trek or Star Wars. The Millennial Falcon, that probably was based off of this thing. But this church is on stilts, and it's like a little saucer, and you can walk up in there. But underneath there is what they believe is Peter's house. And there's pretty good evidence that it was probably Peter's house, because this was Peter's hometown, or he had moved to this hometown. He saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. Now, what I find fascinating here is she doesn't ask for healing. She doesn't display faith. She doesn't ask for anything. He touched her hand and the fever left. Jesus steps in and he says, "I'm not asking for permission." Boom. I titled this "The Disruptive Authority of Jesus." Jesus' authority disrupts the status quo. The people are fine for just the status quo to go on. Yeah, there's leprosy. Yeah, there's paralysis. But Jesus doesn't like the status quo. He came to this earth to change the status quo. Not only for them, but for us. And he changes it for us individually. He touched her hand, the fever left her. She got up and began to wait on them. It speaks to the immediate authority that Jesus has over something like fever. She immediately began to wait on him and serve him. She began to immediately do that. When the evening came, many who were demon-possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. He is disrupting the status quo. He has come to earth, and his kingdom is now going to speak out. Things are about to change. The status quo is about to change big time, and he's stepping into that. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. We typically think about that as something he did on the cross. But he did that in his ministry. He steps in and he's going to change things. He wants to change things. He's holding back right now. Look, he's got all the receipts. By his death and resurrection on the cross, he's holding all the receipts. And at any moment, he can say, okay, it's time to take it back. It's time to take it back. It's time to change. I cannot allow what's going on to go on any further. He's just waiting. He's waiting for the Father. Andy Griffith is having to deal with Luke, but he's also having to deal with the inspector. I've got my rules. I've got the things I've got to go by. I've got the tear gas, called the stage. There's procedure we have to go by, we have to follow. But Andy is working from a different basis. He's working from a basis of authority. He knows Luke, Rafe Hollister. He knows him. And he knows if he wanted to kill you, he wouldn't have just shot that hat off. And he steps up and he steps into that line of fire. Jesus has the authority to step in and disrupt this world, the status quo. And he can do it in large things like war. He can do it in small things like domestic violence. But the main place he wants to step in is your heart and my heart. He wants to disrupt the status quo in our hearts. Because he says, if you will understand his authority, if you will by faith embrace that authority, if you will day in and day out live by that faith, there's a banquet. And when everybody's sent out, you'll sit there and get to stay. I had this situation. Many of you know I used to work for the Dallas Mavericks. And when I was working for the Dallas Mavericks, Bob Weiss was the color commentator. And Bob and I got to know each other pretty well. And he went there and went to do some basketball coaching in China later on. But he went right after that. He left and he went to Atlanta to play for the Hawks. I mean, not to play, to coach the Hawks. And so I was telling some friends of mine, Gail's from Atlanta, and we go down to Atlanta for Christmas and everything, and we were spending time down there. And I have friends of mine that were in college with me and all, and they're around there. And I said, yeah, I know the coach of the Atlanta Hawks. They said, you don't. I said, no, I'll get us tickets. So I called his secretary, and I said, I need tickets. Well, how many tickets do you need? I said, I think I need 6. I need 6 tickets. Okay, so he got tickets. And so these guys are coming, oh, man, you call somebody give you tickets, yeah, I got tickets. And so, we're sitting there watching the game, all 5,000 of us in the stadium, not many people in there and anything, but we're sitting there watching. So afterwards, we said, all right, we got to get Marta, catch Marta and get back out to the station and everything. We can't lollygag around. Wait. I'm going down to see Bob. He said, oh, man, you're just joking. Oh, man. I said, no, I'm going to go down and see Bob. And so I keep going. They just, 5 of my friends, brother-in-law and all, they're just sitting up there just watching. They said, he's talking to the policeman, the security guard. And the guard goes back in the room. And the guard comes out and he does this. He says, and so as I'm going into the Atlanta Hawks locker room, I go, and my guys are going. So we talk about a minute. Just he knew I was going to be a pastor and asked me how it was going and everything. But that's the way it's going to be at that banquet. There's going to be people that had opportunity. They had opportunity to live for Christ, to demonstrate God's goodness, to be under faith, to when the choice was made by there, that they had the opportunity to choose to put Christ first, and then they backed off of that. And when we see somebody that we say, what are they doing? And we see them, they're staying in the banquet hall. There's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in there. Shoot, you going out. Wait a minute. Wow. He had authority. Why didn't I live? Why didn't I make decisions why didn't I act like that? Because here's the fact of the matter. Whether he heals as a testimony or whether he chooses not to is still a testimony. Am I going to believe him? Am I going to believe that he has the authority to do what he needs to do and wants to do in my life and in the world? The disruptive authority of Jesus. When Jesus confronts the world, the status quo changes. And he wants to change the status quo in your life and in mine. Let's pray. Father, thank you that Christ not only taught, but he acted. And he acted with full authority. He demonstrated that he was indeed Messiah. And he understood what motivated us at the very heart and core of our being. And he came to address that need and that hurt. Father, I pray that we would walk in faith. We would respond to his authority in faith. And may it be said of us that we've come from so far away, but we have found a place to dine with Jesus. For it's in his name I pray. Amen. Amen.